is an attempt to sort of gauge what people's concerns and priorities are about the big society. There's going to be a lot of changes with things like council funding. It's going to be devolved down to a very localised level, and we just want to see what people think is absolutely key to be preserved and what they think can be devolved, what they think they can take over running for themselves.
We wanted to find out about how different communities think about the big society across the country, with a particular focus on minority ethnic groups and poverty.
We've organised a sort of a Runnymede roadshow. We're going to be going to 3 towns around Britain: Croydon, Blackburn and Newcastle. Blackburn has just about the average level of ethnic diversity. Newcastle has below average, it's predominantly white, and Croydon has above average. We'd like to see how the ethnic mix affects people's feelings about this.
I find there aren't very many opportunities to talk about things that go on locally.
It's just to get an understanding of inside the government mind, really. Because if you don't understand inside the government mind, you'll never know where they are leading you.
The way the voting system was going, fewer people being involved, I think, or becoming more cynical of what politicians were doing. This was perhaps an initiative to try and bring more people in, make it more inclusive, say, right, we're going to give you more power now.
Elected officials are abrogating their responsibility to actually govern.
They're asking the community to do the work as opposed to paying wages for staff to carry out the work.
I've learned a lot from other people's views, but I still don't understand what the government wants to do about this big society. I don't understand what they really mean.
I found the discussion really interesting, and I find to my horror that these proposals are actually real proposals the government is being serious about.
Certainly the cutbacks are playing a very big part in this, but at the end of the day, if it creates a feeling of people feeling involved, it can only be beneficial. Having said that, it needs organising, and obviously that takes money to organise, and it takes people to sort of bring people together. How one does that, I'm not really sure at the moment.
Getting participants engaged was quite an interesting process. We were a bit worried at first that these ideas are quite abstract and that people wouldn't be able to relate it to their everyday experiences. As it turned out, that wasn't the case at all. People were really, really engaged and had some very important and insightful things to say about it.
Some of it seems to be almost an aspiration to take us back to some sort of halcyon days, almost the Dixon and Doc Green type era, that somehow society was better and somehow we've lost that.
A few of us in the room who've been around for a long time could look back and think at times that actually we could go to council meetings. We felt like we had more power then.
I do not have the skills to solve all the problems. There's a reason that we pay professionals to do it, is that they have the skills and the knowledge. You may be handing the power to people who don't know what they're doing.
Where are the volunteers going to come from? Because people are being forced into low-paid jobs. People that I'm working with are so stressed at the minute about the fact that, you know, if your children are 5, you're meant to get yourself a job.
Yeah.
Well, who looks after your children?
I don't have time to solve all the problems. You know, I work 9 to 5, people who have families, people who maybe work a couple of jobs. I think it could be quite underrepresentative of parts of our society who have a lot of work on. It's great for ladies that lunch, but I would really struggle to commit to more than I currently do.
I'm a little bit more nervous about the idea than I was before. If we're all going to have a say on things, then we need to talk about it and share ideas and appreciate different points of view.
If the government really do listen to us, then they may be able to make it work, but if they don't, I don't see it working.
My concerns are that, you know, in any large group, if a large group is formed, a certain vocal people take over.
You will always get the same people who do these things already doing it. It's the same people that volunteer to do the church fete or who do neighbourhood watch. Most people work, so the last thing necessarily that they want to do at the end of a long day is to go to someone's house for a neighbourhood watch meeting.
Could there be a point like where you give them too much power that, you know, so it goes wrong, you know, it all starts colliding and everybody's views and opinions start going out of hand.
It's all very well to say we want to hand power over to local people, local communities to make their own decisions, but how will that be enabled?
You end up with single issue groups or whatever coming to the fore and their opinions take precedence over others.
As things get worse and as communities get more deprived, there's sort of the worry of things moving further to the right. You know, the rise of the English Defence League and it's sort of big society and actually in a more perverted sort of way.
Be careful what you ask for, because we live in a country where if we were to have a referendum on the death penalty, we would probably have the death penalty back.
Absolutely.
They want all of the community to give out all these ideas so that when it goes wrong, they can blame it on the community as opposed to blame it on themselves.
I found out some very interesting facts. We found out quite how broad people's feelings about it are. We found out things that we didn't necessarily expect.
You could, in theory, look at it more positively and say, okay, well, the government's saying, if you want more of a say in society, if you want to change things, you need to step up to the plate, air your views, get involved, because unless you get involved, you're not going to change anything.
You do have to get out there and talk and say what you mean.
When young people have gone on the streets for the Iraq war demonstration, what happened there? Downing Street's gates were closed, security was imposed, and I think when tuition fees went down, it's not what you said before, students got up and protested, maybe a bit too late, but I think one of the key things for young people is when they do go and protest, often a bit too late, they still feel that they still do it, a bit lazy, maybe like 6 o'clock in the evening when the decision's made at 10 in the morning. But better later than never. But when they do it, they see that actually it has no impact whatsoever.
I think the biggest fear is that, it will, like one of my colleagues said earlier, the big society will become the big divide.
If you want social change, if you want legislative change, whatever type of change we want, we're going to have to actually physically do something about it rather than just sit back and say, oh, well, I don't really have time to do this.
The people who read that will be the people who are already doing stuff, and they'll be like, well, what more do you want us to do? Whereas the people who actually need to hear it are the people who won't ever listen to it.
I bet it was a man sitting in an office thought that one up.
Yeah. The new way of electing them, will they be trained or what will be their skills and abilities?
Who is going to decide what the police do? Is it going to be the Chief Superintendent of Croydon, or is it going to be Mrs Smith, the elected police commissioner?
You'd have to have a lot of knowledge to vote sensibly. I think graffiti's a problem. But if I voted for someone who said I'm going to get rid of graffiti, and unbeknownst to me that meant the budget for terrorism was cut, I've made a terrible choice because I didn't know about it.
They might not be the cleverest, they might not know what they're doing, but they still want to do it for the hell of it and actually get elected.
You will end up politicising the police force. Undoubtedly the people that will run to be these elected commissioners will be party political.
People like bobbies on the beat, but they don't actually do an awful lot to combat crime. It's kind of, the back office investigations where we're actually needing the manpower, but we all like to see a bobby on the beat. So we might be voting for the wrong thing because we don't have an understanding of how to solve a crime.
A lot of people are misinformed about quite a lot of things and believe a lot of what they read in the newspapers. It should be people who are researching this who should be the people who are implementing it, because they're the people who know most about society as it works.
We already have a voice in the form of safer neighbourhood teams. And again, it's the same people that go to these things. Their perception of crime is actually probably worse than the realities, but it'd be them that are voting.
What is the problem that the government thinks it's solving by allowing people to set up their own schools?
When I went to school, you had, Chinese people, black people, whatever, and we were all educated the same, we all had the same opportunities. Now, what concerns me, if someone come along and say, for example, I'm a Muslim, I want my children educated this way, they won't mix with other people. They won't, as we're doing, we're sitting here.
Traditionally, we've had Christian schools, and no government has been willing to address that and say, right, get rid of all, because all faith schools, so therefore they said, okay, we'll have one kind. I think the solution to that problem is get rid of faith schools, period.
It does try to develop or maintain already a two-tier system.
No matter how fair you might want to promote it, it will always be the dominating majority in the community that will always enforce their views.
The shy people, how are they going to come forward? Are you going to go knock on the door and ask them?
If you've got a middle-class group of parents who've all got degrees, it's much more easier for them to set up a free school as it was a group of parents who are from abroad and English is a second language for them. For true fairness, you've got to have accessibility.
The majority of parents and teachers are not interested in setting up a school. There's catering for children with special needs and mainstream. It already exists.
If someone wants to set up a school, they can do it because they can do it under a private trust anyway.
Where the controls of the money, it's wrong. It's costing more money as well.
Some parents are not even capable to know what schooling a child is all about. You're going to have people with various different ideas why they don't want their children to go into that school and go into that school. This is causing chaos.
Which box are we going to pull out from under the bed marked teachers? How are they going to pay them? Are they going to be in a position to be able to poach teachers because they offer better terms and conditions?
Are they going to take them from these schools that's already doing well, which will start coming down to the table?
Surely it would just be better to scrap this idea and have the money put into making sure all schools are decent and are decently funded.
What we all want is actually good local schools for everybody.
I think people made some really valid points. You have to be prescriptive with a discussion, otherwise it can just go totally random.
I'd love to do it again. I'm surprised about the amount of people who contributed, and I think a lot of people have got a lot to say.
We do hope that our report will inform the debate and will make some impact on policy and practice.
If you'd like to know anything more about the Fairs Fair, just go to our website www.runnymedetrust.org.